let's roll. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Let me break everything as I'm doing this properly. Okay. If this thing will just kind of come up a little bit. I'm not the shortest person here. Okay. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate your attendance here. Let me just explain really quickly what we're doing so that we can get right into it and answer your questions, get your comments, and be out of here by 3 o'clock if we can. Okay, or maybe before that. We'll see how it goes. We've invited you to come to look over or tell us, if you haven't looked at, the facilities handbook. And let me explain a little bit about what it is. How many of you had ever heard of the facilities handbook before you got the emails? Oh, 3, 4. Okay, now we're in business. Okay. All right, so let's just talk about what it is. Okay, the facilities handbook is a handbook that describes all the regulations, the rules, the guidelines for using the facilities at Robson Ranch, with the exception of the golf course and what happens in the grill. So it only applies to that. So if you have a question about golf, we can't help here because the facilities committee does not at all work on the golf course. So that's important. Okay, the reason it is a facilities handbook is with the facilities committee is that's part of our charter. And you can see our charter, it's up on the website. If you go up and look under HOA committees and scroll down there and find facilities, you can find our charter, and you can read the whole charter if you'd like to. But one of our responsibilities is to update and document the facilities handbook. So that's why we're doing it. That's why this committee worked on it. And we start every year talking about, do we have to make changes to the handbook? And we start that conversation in January. Most of the time, the answer is no. But this year was different, and so we've been working on it pretty much off and on since January. Okay, the first facilities use handbook was published in September of 2015. And what it was is we took out parts what was in the old rules and regulation document and put it into a separate document about the facilities. We did it because the rules and regulation document talks a lot more about parking and stuff like that, and we felt that it was not as easy to adjust as if we had a different handbook or a different set of rules and regulations that applied just to the facilities. And that was a decision by the HOA board, and we did that. Now, this was something that may have confused you. It's confused my committee, but I'm going to talk about that just for a second. It says here there's a current version document control number, and it's 050305. And my committee said, well, you dummy. You've got this number, this bullet should be in front of the bullet just above it, because that's 2015. This number is not about a date. It is about the number of times that this handbook has been changed. And we do that for a variety of reasons. We do it because we want to make sure we know when we changed the handbook and why we changed it. So if you'll look at that number, it says 05. That means that the handbook has been changed significantly 5 times since 2015. The second block of numbers says, well, this is kind of like a minor change. We may have changed 1 or 2 things, but not a whole bunch. Okay? That's what that's for. And the final number is if we can't spell. You know, if we misspelled something, had a grammar error, we correct it. But all of that is documented. It's on a spreadsheet in the HOA office. So if things go wrong or we can't figure out when we did that, we can go back and find out exactly when we did it and why we did it. So that's a good device for us, meaning the people who are working on this, to know where we are. So just want to give you all up to speed on that. Okay. Moving on. Okay, all right. Let's just talk about, I'm going to give you this overview of what we think we changed, what we know we changed, and then we'll get down to let you ask us questions. Okay, the first thing we did is in the handbook, we have always used the code of conduct here at Robson Ranch as the means for controlling behaviors, responses by our residents in the facilities. It had never been properly documented. It had been referenced in a half a sentence. So now we've gone back and put in a full reference to the code of conduct. It's actually in the rules and regulations document, as you see when you look at the paper itself. So that got added, and that's really very important because that's how we determine if someone's just really off the wall, doing something that's inappropriate in one of our facilities, or they don't respond to the request of operations, this is the mechanism by which they have to address their behavior. And the penalty for not following the code of conduct is to be suspended from using the facilities. So that's how it works. All right, next thing we changed. We put in more detailed information about guest passes. That piece of information was put into last year's handbook. I think we changed it last year. But there's more detail now. It talks about having multi-day guest passes. It talks about the fact that you have to have one. If you have a guest, you have to go fill one out. There are two conditions under which you do it. One condition, you don't have to do it. One, you do. It's all in the handbook. That part did not change. One of the things I want you all to note, and this is really important, and we have oftentimes not properly enforced this, is if you have a guest here who's under the age of 18, you, the resident, must accompany that guest at all times. So you can't send them to the pool by themselves. You know, you can't send them down to the tennis courts by themselves. You have to accompany them. Okay, that's a little additional information that was added. The next thing that was added is the policy related to the use of HOA assets by residents. This is a very old policy. I've lived here 20 years, and it was in effect when I was here. It had never been documented. So the purpose of putting this in is to document it so that you know what it is and how it's used. It's very straightforward. It just says that if you're using HOA assets to create something, you can't sell it to just on open market. You can't retail it. If you're going to do it for yourself or give it as a gift to your family or do it for your club to fund the club, that's okay. Or if you do it for a charity that's been designated by your club, you can do it, and that's okay. But you, as a resident, cannot use the HOA facilities for personal gain. Straightforward, pretty simple. We'll be more than glad to answer questions about this in a few moments. The next question also has been around as long as I've been here, and that's whether or not something that's in one of these buildings belongs to the HOA or belongs to you. And that's kind of important. You know, when we have clubs here who've done a wonderful thing for the HOA. The pickleball club has put up a bunch of lights. They donated the money. It doesn't belong to the pickleball club. It belongs to the HOA. Even the table tennis club bought their own tables. And guess what? Those tables belong to the HOA. So the question is, what happens if you're, let's say, over in the CATC, and you're building a table for your house, and you bring wood in? Does it belong to the HOA? And the answer is, of course not. It belongs to the resident who brought them in. It was brought in to be used for their personal use, and only their use. It's not being shared with a number of people. That's important. So think about that. That's pretty straightforward. Okay. Also, if you are going to bring something in to display, how many of you have been to the CATC? Probably a lot of you are CATC people. Okay. You go in there, and those display windows are beyond fabulous. There's great stuff in there. And the stuff that's in there does not belong to the HOA. It belongs to the resident. They are the ones who brought it there. It's there for display purposes only. In some cases, the club will actually sell items out of the display case, and the money they take for the items that are in the display case that they sell goes back to fund the club. So that's an item that doesn't belong to the HOA. And sometimes, and I think this has happened with Rock and Roll Group, sometimes people just loan equipment to the HOA or to a club for a special event. Obviously, that is their property, and when they leave, they take it with them. And you also have, in some cases, there are places, and particularly in the CATC, where you can store something that belongs to you, and you'll have to haul it around. Even in this building here, the bridge clubs, they store their cards here and their bidding boxes. Those do not belong to the HOA. They belong to the club. So if you are permitted storage by the HOA, that is yours, not somebody else's, not the HOA's. But I want you to know those are just two policies that have been in effect for a very, very long time. They've just never been documented. So, okay? Now, another thing we did is if you look at the handbook, in the past, it talks about individual facilities, and it still does. It's just organized a little differently now. But the important thing is, what I'm going to talk about now are things that are specific to a facility. For example, we now have controlled access to the CATC. And how many of you have sweated that one out where it didn't work right? Okay. I've been lucky. I've been able to get in and out without any trouble with my PDK app, but it hasn't worked for everybody. But the good news is we're working on this problem, and it's getting better. We're clearly not done, but we're working on it. So that's an important thing that we do talk about in our document. We also, for the first time, have treated the library as the amenity that it has always been for the HOA. And so we decided that it was foolish not to talk about it appropriately. How many of you have visited the library at the CATC? Okay, so people, you guys know where it is. We find out that some homeowners and residents don't know where it's at, so we'll work that one out. Okay, a couple other changes that are kind of important is one, there has been an operational policy decision to make sure that if you are at the pool, on the patio, maybe out even playing tennis. I don't know how you do this, you're playing tennis, but maybe you can. That if you want to listen to music, you've got to use earbuds or personal devices because not everybody wants to hear what you do. And so that is a new policy. You'll see it's been documented in the handbook. And on the sports courts, hooray for bocce, yay team. It looks like bocce is about to come to be because at least the building's over there and they were working on it when I drove up today. So we have high hopes that that's a really close thing. So we talked about how to talk about the sports courts. We have three groups. We have bocce, pickleball, and tennis, and they're all sports courts. They have very similar requirements, very similar characteristics. So we have created a single section of the handbook to deal with those three items. That's the changes that you'll see. Now, the other change you'll see, if you looked at the whole handbook, you think, oh my God, they changed everything. In some cases, we just moved stuff around. You know, we put something in this section and something in that section. Well, when you're using Word and you're tracking your changes, as soon as you move it, it's treated as if it were brand new and you never heard of it before. So when you look at this document and it's full of red, you're going, oh my gosh, what did they change? And the answer is not really very much, okay? But it just looks like a lot. So I wanted you to know, those are the basic things that we changed. There's some few word changes along the way. We changed a couple of titles, but you'll see them, and we're more than happy to answer your questions. Now, let's make it your turn. Okay. I hope some of you have come here with questions or comments. Kathy Dial, who's on, by the way, this is part of my facilities committee. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members of the facilities committee here today to listen to you and to help us document this so that when we get to our next meeting, that we can talk about what you had to say. But Kathy, the kind-hearted soul here, is going to document what you say. She's going to write down for us, if you have a concern about something in the handbook that we need to change or look at or spelled wrong, she's going to write it down so that we'll leave this meeting and go fix that. Also, and I know sometimes you're here not just to talk about one thing, and this meeting is about the handbook, but if there's something else you want us as a committee to talk about or think about, we'll put that on another sheet of paper so that we can put it to our agenda for the next meeting. Okay, so everybody good with that? Okay, when you have a question, a concern, an issue, a misspelling, come to the microphone. You have 3 minutes to tell us about it, and we'll react. Somebody want to go first? Yes, sir. And please tell us your name and your address so we know who you are.
My name is Don Hicks. I live on Landmark Court.
Okay.
There's been some confusion in the type of members that a club in Robson can have.
Okay.
I helped start 2 clubs out here,
okay.
The Rotary Club and the Lions Club. And the Rotary Club joined or started as a non-sponsored club originally. And with that, they never were able to get noticed in the regular emails that went out, you know, what activities they were doing because they were not officially sponsored so that they could have members from outside. And that limited them. But now I see them part of the regular mailings that go out.
Right. They're treated like a chartered club now.
Yeah, the Rotary Club is a part of the regular mailings that go out, say they're having activity, blood drives, or whatever they're doing.
Right, exactly.
And I think it would be great if we could figure out a way to make it possible for clubs like Rotary or Lions or whoever could have members from the outside be members, because it could help them, whatever that club is doing, raise money and have activities, as well as get people from the outside to come here and see the great ranch that we live in, buy a house, whatever.
Pay their dues. I like that.
Yeah, all those things that we want people to come here and see what we do. You know, support our restaurant. So we need to figure out a way to do that so that we can have members outside, not just people that live here. Because if we're only depending on people that live here, it can be limiting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me just kind of clarify this a little bit more, because Mr. Hicks is right. Matter of fact, you and I may have talked about this a long time ago, because I had to deal with this. There was a policy at Robson for a very long time about, you know, the clubs had to be clubs that were set here. They were not affiliated with an outside organization, international organization like the Lions or the Kiwanis or the Rotary. And that was a policy that was in place when I moved here. I think what's happened over time is they have relaxed that policy. And if you look not in the handbook, but we should perhaps, I think we may have referenced it in the handbook. If you look in the rules and regs, it talks about what you can do as a chartered club. And it does allow for outside participants in a chartered club here, as long as it does not preclude the ability of a resident to participate in that club. That is in the regulations, rules, and regs. It's already there, been there a long time. It is kind of a topic of discussion because we don't have a lot of space here at Robson. And I think people worry about, you know, we aren't building any new buildings this year, nor next year as far as I know. And so there is that concern about what happens when, you know, a resident can't get into a club or can't participate because there's not enough space. So that is kind of a discussion point that we have talked about in our facilities committee, and we'll put that one back up there. Plus, we'll check on this change in policy about clubs that are really affiliated with a national organization.
We should consider associate members with limited rights as a member, whatever that may be, to make that possible, so the club can do things that they want to do, but also get exposure to the rest of the world.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hicks. You may get a phone call to invite you to the facilities committee to give us some more detail. Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Yes, sir.
Wayne Denton, and I live at Ravenwood Drive. My question is on the restrictions for use of Robson assets by a resident, and it goes down to list items that are acceptable.
Yes.
It says for
pull
personal,
the mic up, or take it off the stand and hand.
For personal use, gifts to family or friends, items created to produce revenue for a club of Robson Ranch, Denton.
Yes.
And then the item that I have a problem with, it says items created to produce revenue for a charity authorized by the board of a club of Robson Ranch, Denton. You're saying that you can only give something to a charity if they're going to make money off of it.
Well, actually, not entirely, because for example, help me on this one, and I may be misunderstanding you. The Yarn Divas produce tons of baby blankets and bonnets and booties, and they give it to the Presby Hospital for the NICU unit, and they do that, and Presby's not reselling that, they're just doing it to provide something for them. Now, I don't know, I think I hear what you're saying. You're wondering if they gave this to a charity, could the charity then sell it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, that's a really good question. I don't think we have the answer.
I create crosses that I give to a charity, and they use them as rewards to people.
Yeah.
They don't sell them, but according to what it says here, only items that are created to produce revenue for a charity.
Okay, let us look at that. That's a very good point. There are clubs already who are not doing that. They're donating, but there's nothing going forward to that charity in terms of the charity selling those items. We'll check that out. Thank you very much. Anybody else have a question or a comment? Boy, you guys are way too easy. Okay, Gary.
Under the dog park,
Yes.
throughout the document, you made an attempt to change from homeowner to resident.
Oops, I missed one then. Okay.
But under the dog park, starting at item F,
Okay.
you say owners are to stay within the park. Now, I'm thinking you mean pet owners.
Pet owners, yes.
Versus homeowners or residents.
Well, we let them in the park too with their dog, yes, but you're
But
right.
I would think then it should say pet owners
Okay.
because that's conflicting.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a good point.
And that's F on down.
Okay, we have a find option on Word. We'll fix it, okay? All right. Okay, and by the way, we did have to go back and correct this because sometimes we lose track of the fact that people who rent property here are residents, and they have the same options to use the facilities as everybody else. So we started out, we looked through the document, and we realized we kept saying homeowner, homeowner, homeowner. So we went back and we tried to change all the homeowners to residents where it made sense. But pet owners is what we're talking about. We expect people who are in the dog park to own the pet they brought in, to control that pet. Okay. Anybody else have a concern or confusion? Yes, sir. Go ahead, Gary.
I'll ask a second one.
Go. Feel free.
It appears that well, it doesn't appear, according to the table of contents, all of the items under the policies specific to a facility, those were listed in alphabetical sequence. The facilities were listed in alphabetical sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than grouping, I mean, the garden, the horseshoe pits, and the dog park are all next to each other.
And that's
It
true.
seems like they ought to be next to each other. The library is the only amenity inside the CATC. It seems like the library ought to be underneath the CATC.
Okay.
Rather than just a strict alphabetical
Okay, well, let me see if I can explain myself, and then if we need to rethink that, we certainly can. Obviously, we were talking about amenities, the facility in this case. And the library, for example, it is in the CATC, but it really is an amenity of the HOA. All the equipment that's in there, everything that's in there was purchased by the HOA. The library staff, most of them, there's a tremendous library staff, volunteers who go and work in there. But it's truly an amenity. It is really part of being Robson Ranch. You don't have to join a club to go use it. You just get to go and use it as you see fit. So that's why it's listed for the first time by itself. And I think that makes sense. Now, why is it in this particular order? You know, we don't actually know, we wish we knew, but we don't know who actually looks at the handbook. And we think some people only look at the handbook for something they're going to be interested in, you know, like the horseshoe pits, or like the softball field, or maybe it's the tennis court, it's a sports court. So we wanted to make it to where they could find it easily, and that's why it's alphabetical. So you don't have to read the whole thing to figure out where it is. And it's not about geographic location, it's about the separate amenity or separate facility. So that's why it's organized that way. We can certainly rethink it. As we looked at it, it made a lot of sense. And if people use it as we think they do, which is to look at what their amenity is, what their facility is they really care about, then I think we're probably okay with the alphabetical order. And the good news, it's a short list. So it's not hard to read the whole list. Anybody else have a comment or concern about the handbook? I am telling you, this is record time work. Okay. Yes, please. Come up, Jay.
Wait.
Oh, okay, I'm prepared. I knew we should have.
Jay Vandenbree out on Goodland Drive.
Yeah.
I'll go easy to hard. It's just
Whatever
to,
works for
prep
you.
for that. The first thing in general, there's a lot of references to approvals by board or designee. Are there a list of designees or a specific board contact if you have a question?
The answer is no, not one listed, if that's what you're asking. There is a list in the front of the handbook that lists who all the people are. Not everybody, but most of the people. It is on, she says, let me find that magic page. Because we had to change the title for one. It is, after definitions, well, I lost it, let me think. It is on page 3. I got it. That, I know, I sweat that. It says, here it says, personnel responsible for the management of the facilities, and there actually is a list of 4 people.
Okay.
With their phone
and they
numbers.
can answer anything, so it's not by particular room or
No, well, yes, it is different. Obviously, there's the GM, and there's an administrative assistant. There's the director of banquets and events, which is Shelby, who does all of the scheduling, except for the summer run and the Pinnacle. And then there's the sports center management, which is Judith. And so those are the people that would be able to answer almost all of your questions.
All right, I just want to make sure that people
It's
go
in
to the
there.
right place, that's all.
I just had to find it.
Second thing, 5K, you talk about priority of rooms. Several times in several organizations where rooms were booked, we got bumped out for other events.
I know.
Normally HOA events.
Yes.
Assuming that that's how we're going to do it, maybe you should put something in there that says the HOA can bump you out of a room.
It actually does say that. Let me find it for you. That part we didn't change. So it's
I
taking me a
went over
minute to
that
find
pretty
it.
well,
Okay, I'll
too,
find
I
it.
thought.
Okay, so, all right.
Right, it says they have priority, but I didn't see where it said they could
I'm looking for it. Let's see.
ride over.
Yeah, that is the honest truth, and that is the truth. And I'm trying to find. I still look for it, Jay, but and that did not change. It's been there for some time.
No, I just was looking for a call out, just so people know.
Yeah, it's in here. I'll tell you what, Jay. I'll look for it when I'm home, and I'll send you back an email. And if I don't find it, it'll go on the list. Put it on the list now, anyway, Kathy, and we'll make sure we have it. They do that for obvious reasons. I mean, it's very clear.
Yeah.
They do it because they can. Oftentimes, when they move somebody, it's because they have a revenue-generating event. I'm in the poker club up here on Tuesday nights. We get moved all the time because usually we're in that room right there, and when they have a big hoo-ha in here, we're down at the other end of the building. So that just happens. You have to kind of go with the flow and know that that's going to happen, and then the rest of the residents are going like, yes, because that's money in the bank. That means our dues don't go up so fast. So it is in there, and I'll find exactly where it is. But if we don't have it worded the way you want, we'll talk to you.
Okay, no problem. And 5K, you talk about the average number of participants.
Yes.
Doesn't matter the size of the room, so if it's in here versus the boardroom and the grill?
Well, obviously, the scheduling is done based on size of number of people who attend typically, and they do that. Here's the reason that's in there. What you want to do here, and again, this is not new. This is old. This is not something we just came up with this year. But it came up about 5 years ago, actually, 6 years ago when we first put this in there. And what it means is that we have, sometimes a group will start out, a club will start out, and it's like a big bunch. It's 20 people, 25 people, and over time they dwindle down to 4 people. Yeah. And to hold a room for 4 people doesn't necessarily make sense, particularly if somebody else wants that room that has more than 4 people in it. So that's why that is in there. And the scheduling is done based on size, the number of participants you expect.
Right. The only question was, would someone take over a big group when they had a small group and someone who has a big group can't get in? If it's 10 for everybody?
Well, okay. That's a good question. That's a really good question. The reason it's 10, obviously, and this is not 10 at any one time. If a club meets repeatedly, like once a month, then it's 10 over a period of time. Because some days, Christmas time, people just don't do stuff. Or Thanksgiving, they do something. In the summertime, they're off on some exotic vacation. So the attempt is to try to make sure that we don't destroy a club because they've got a shortfall one time or twice, but that we make best use of this facility, or all the facilities, in terms of space. So that's why it's in there. And 10 was the number that we thought we could deal with effectively, and maybe that's the wrong number. I wouldn't argue that number too hard, but I do think if you would come down the hallway here during the day and look in the room and say, oh, there's 20 people in there. And the next room over there's 12. And the next room over there's 40. And so it does vary. And our goal here is to make sure that facilities are available to groups, not 1, 2, 3, 4 people. And sometimes you'll walk down this hall and you'll find 4 people in there. And that means the room was empty, and we needed a place to meet to have a conversation or a discussion or a plan or do planning. So sometimes you'll just see 4 people in there, but it wouldn't be a club.
All right, especially with the pressure on more homes, more people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. You talked about not-for-profit facility. Do people give lessons out on the tennis courts or pickleball
Yes, they
courts?
do.
They pay for that?
Yes,
Okay.
they do. And my understanding is on the back of the handbook, there is an instructor form they have to fill out, and they do pay. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of references to a member of HOA operations. Is that paid member?
Yes, it's a staff member.
Okay. I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Right, see how easy these were?
Okay.
Okay,
I'm
now
glad
it's
you read it
getting
carefully.
complicated.
Okay.
I only have one more, but it's
Okay.
the big one.
This is the big one. Oh, God. Okay. Should I sit down?
And no, you may want to run around. It revolves the music decision about earphones and earbuds and that kind of stuff. Since I've been here, it feels like every time there's a music or sound question, who gets the nod are the people who don't want it, not the people who may want it. And it feels to me like there could be an area of compromise in between the two that wouldn't shut you off from everyone else when you wanted to listen to music.
Okay.
So whether it's different times for things, I know there are, speakers out on the pergola by the Pinnacle. Maybe they're up so with that area you can hear music, but not the whole pool. Or what about in the hallways when we're selling tickets and we play some music for people who are standing in line and doing that? This is kind of an all-encompassing, you can't have music anywhere.
Yeah.
And some sort of compromise that takes both perspectives into account.
Okay, all right. Let me see what we let me tell you what we tried to do to try to accommodate that. Not everything, not all that you said. One of the things we did talk about, because we talked about the earbuds and the thing, and, if you're just trying to have a quiet day at the pool and read a book and get a little sunshine, the last thing you want is somebody with Bluetooth beside you blasting away because it's distracting. So there is a reason to not do that. Now, it does mean that person doesn't get to hear the music unless they're going to put their earbuds in. But one of the things we did do is we went back and we looked at the fact that we have a patio at the Pinnacle, which is right by the pool. We have a ramada down at the tennis courts and pickleball courts. There's going to be a ramada at the bocce. So those are places that can be reserved by a group, and we went back and we said that at those places you can have a speaker, you can play music aloud, or a live band even. So we have tried to accommodate those areas where it would be like a party, it would be an event, and I think that may cover it. It doesn't handle the hallway out here, I grant you, but there are people in the rooms oftentimes that would be hearing the music in the hall. I know these guys because on Tuesday nights, a lot of Tuesday nights, they're selling tickets or getting a lineup for people to buy tickets to the rock and roll concert. And I'm playing poker. We have a little conflict if you had a lot of loud music out there. So I think we have to recognize that if we're talking about something like that, where there might be other people affected, you have to be careful about it. But we did accommodate the patios and the ramadas to allow just that. So music's played either live or on a speaker. Now, if that may not be enough for you, and if you want to come talk to us about it, we're open.
Yeah, I mean, we are a resort community, so to speak. At least that's how we're built. But remember, the same thing that you could listen to and only hear music, you could put in your ears and not hear music. So there's a solution there, too.
Well, anyhow, if you'd like to come and talk to us about it, I mean, we're more than willing to listen to it. We did see an issue, but maybe we've not gone far enough. But I think we've tried to accommodate the fact that there can be live music or speaker music in public places, as long as it's part of an event.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay. Anybody else? Anybody else have a long list? Okay, Gary is back.
I realized I didn't give my name and street before, so it's Gary Koenig on Crestview.
Okay, thank you.
One nit under the pool of the ponds at Robson Ranch. It says Drinkwater Boulevard. Drinkwater is not a boulevard; it is a drive.
Okay,
so
I can
we
change
probably
that.
want to
That's an
fix
easy
that.
fix.
Up under the library, it says requests to host meetings in the library are processed by the Director of Banquets and Events.
That's true.
And I don't believe the library is ever notified when a meeting has been scheduled. So therefore, the library volunteers, when people come in and say, we're going to have a meeting, they don't know whether this is a scheduled meeting or an unscheduled meeting.
That's a good point.
And should the volunteers say, no, you may not have an unscheduled meeting unless you schedule it? And if they don't know that a meeting's been scheduled, what are they supposed to do? So.
Well, okay, those are about 3 different questions, but let's do it the first thing first. Okay, the Director of Banquet and Events, which is Shelby, whom we all know, Shelby does schedule an event. So if a club decides they want to meet in the library, and there are some clubs now meeting in the library, some book clubs that are meeting in the library later in the evening. So those things are scheduled through Shelby, and they should be, because We need to know how the library is being used, and we want it to be used very efficiently and effectively. Okay, do people go into the library and say, sit at a table and go, oh, let's have a meeting? And that's probably not scheduled. That's probably not a good idea, because other people in that library may not want to listen to your conversation as part of your meeting. That's a really good question. I don't know how we handle that. You know, like sometimes people come here to this building, and there's an empty room, and they just go in and they make their meeting. The library's different because there are people walking in and out. You know, we'll have to inquire about that to see what the right process is. But it's definitely, if you intend to have a meeting that you're scheduling more than one person at, you need to make it through the library, through the banquet, the director of banquets and events, because that's her job. And I think most of the time you'll see, but we don't have a whole lot of special events. Outside the rooms of the CATC, there actually are schedules that say what's going on at what time. I don't know that any special events are added to that. I kind of doubt that they are. We should need to look into that.
Well, in the daily meeting schedule that's posted here in the clubhouse, I don't believe is posted in the CATC.
I know it's not. I know it's not. And that's a good point. Let us go ahead and note that, Kathy, as a discussion, and we'll see what we can do about that. See if that makes more sense to do more than that. But indeed, the library now can be scheduled for special events. So, okay, anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, record time, 2:35, okay. Again, one more thing. Okay. I want to thank you for coming for your feedback. That's the most important thing, because we need to hear from you. We should not, as a committee, be working on just assumptions. We'd like to have facts. And I think we've done a pretty good job over the last couple of years trying to gather facts from our residents, but, you know, we want you to give us things that we should think about and consider. You know, the facilities committee is all residents. We're all volunteers. And so we want to hear what you think. And we need to know that we don't have a handle on everything happening at Robson Ranch. So we expect you to give us feedback, and you are doing it. And thank you very much. The other way that you can give feedback, besides these occasional meetings like this, is we meet once a month, except for December, and then only in December if we have to. So we meet once a month, and we meet at the end of this building, down in the hallway down here, at 1:30 on Tuesdays. And we're pretty faithful about doing that. We rarely ever miss a meeting. And if we do, it's posted on the website. But you are always welcome to come to that meeting and hear us out. Now, if you'd like to speak and be on the agenda, per se, you need to contact me, and then I'll make sure you get on the next agenda. But the important part is you are very welcome to come to our meetings and to hear what we have to say, knowing that much of what we talk about in there is mostly just a lot of conversation, trying to get a feel for things, get an understanding about something. Sometimes we go for a whole meeting and don't make a single decision or a single recommendation to the board. And by the way, we just recommend to the board. We do not make decisions per se. But the bottom line, a lot of our things that happen in that meeting are just conversations, things that we hear, things that have been brought to us by a homeowner, and we want to talk about it before we actually get into the planning process. We need to think about stuff. So feel free to come. Yes?
So what are the next steps for facilities?
Oh, yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, let me just give you what's going on. So yeah, we're done with this nonsense. Okay, here we go. We're going to take these things on this list, go back, see what we have to correct. I'm going to find Jay's question. We're going to find out if it's in here. All right, we're going to do that. We're going to correct those things. They'll go back to the Facilities Committee meeting, which is July 1. Okay, hopefully this is the final proposed draft, we hope, at that point in time. Okay, when that is done, then we're going to, if the committee agrees, we will recommend this to the HOA board that we consider the new handbook as presented to them. Then we post it on the HOA website, and it will be in the same spot right here, but it won't be all that red stuff, hopefully. It'll be easier to see and read, okay? It'll be up there for 30 days. And then at the next HOA meeting, which is, I think, August, don't have my calendar, I think it's the second week in August, is the next HOA general meeting. 19th, is that it? Okay. Yeah, it's 30 days out, so. At that meeting, the board will then have this recommendation to accept the facilities handbook. You would have a chance at that meeting also to make comments on the handbook And we'll probably have to do a little presentation, but not this long, on what's in the handbook, how it's changed. And at that point, if the HOA board agrees to the recommendation, then that will become the new handbook. It's just that easy, and that's how it works. Any questions about the process? Okay. Thank you for coming. See you at the facilities. Come see us at the meeting or just see you around, okay? Have a good day.